Rivers constitute a major barrier for the offensive side and a key anchoring line for the defending side. Engineers are a critical component to crossing water and maintaining pressure against the defending side. This section will help you to understand the options your engineers offer to overcome water barriers and carry the attack forward. To demonstrate the effectiveness of engineers in crossing river hex sides, consider the following situation which the 9th Light Division has found itself in. This is a hypothetical scenario which I will use to demonstrate the various engineer actions related to water. Expect that your opponent will not be so accommodating as mine. Here, the enemy has blown 2 out of 3 of the bridges crossing the river and dug in with bunkers and heavy weapons. The division commander orders a direct frontal assault. Oh, okay. Well, the losses are horrific, and he is immediately sacked. He is replaced by you, much to the appreciation of the men who just watched the abject butchery of their comrades. Other avenues of attack have also been blocked and reinforced. Luckily, you have a plan and the means to carry it out. We will use the engineers to bypass other crossings and force the river. All engineers are capable of ferrying across river hex sides. There is no practical limit to the number of units which an engineer can ferry in one turn. However, hex stacking limits still apply. Because we would not be able to fit both of our attacking battalions onto a single hex, we'll start by separating our engineer battalions into its component companies to utilize the engineer ferry action. Moving our engineer companies into place on the river hex side, we prepare to cross in force. The crossing infantry moves into position on the same hex as their engineers. Engineers can only perform the ferry action when they are deployed and have full movement. So anytime you are planning on using the ferry action, try to end the turn out of travel mode on the hex which you intend to conduct the ferrying from. Otherwise, you'll need to wait another turn to ferry because changing out of travel mode consumes movement. Additionally, the engineer must not be disrupted, nor broken, nor using rail movement. Obviously, disruption of your units is always bad. In the case of engineers, it's particularly bad because it prevents them from bringing their abilities to the battlefield. If you are expecting a water crossing, protect your engineers. Few things are more frustrating than having an entire sector's attack stall because of an unlucky disruption. Consider breaking your engineer battalions into their component companies to further reduce the impact of potential disruptions, especially if you believe your engineers may be the target of enemy artillery or airstrikes. Protect your engineers. Our units are in place, but cannot cross just yet. Both our engineers and our crossing units must have full movement points in order to ferry. We'll soften the enemy units by firing over the river. Then we run the turn to refresh our movement points. As the defending side, we'll try to get a disruption on the engineer unit to prevent a ferry action from taking place. Now, our engineers and our attacking units have full movement. The unit being ferried must meet specific requirements. First and foremost, the unit must be of the type foot, ski, bicycle, or horse. In other words, no heavy equipment. Sorry, armored scout cars. In the case of our motorized light infantry, we will need to again use the on-foot command to allow them to cross via engineer ferry. A unit must be in travel mode in order to ferry. The unit can assault during a ferry if capable, though the same assault penalties apply. Once the criteria are met, simply select the unit you wish to ferry and right-click your destination hex. The reachable hexes shading is very useful for actions like these. If you do not see the hex as available for movement, you are missing a criteria. The assault is successful and we have established our toehold. Note that any unit ferrying will consume its entire movement points during the ferry action. Because of this, and in general, you should pay attention to the terrain that unit will be ferrying on. Try to get them onto a road in an elevated position, bonus points if the position has an existing fortification. Avoid putting your ferrying units into forests and especially marsh or other dense terrain types that would prohibit or slow their movement. Always consider the wider terrain that your units will encounter on the other side of the river. An engineer also has the capability to ferry itself. The engineer must not be disrupted, nor broken, nor using rail movement. The engineer must be in travel mode with full movement points to do so, and conducting the self-ferry action will consume all of the engineer's movement points. A ferrying unit will typically be on the hex of the engineer performing the ferrying action. However, a unit can ferry from an adjacent hex on the opposite side of the river onto the hex with the engineer as long as all other requirements are met. This can be useful in various circumstances like retreats and in support of flanking actions. To carry out this action, select the unit you wish to ferry and right-click on the destination engineer. As a final consideration for the ferrying action, engineers which have a bridge can conduct ferrying actions, but engineers cannot be conducting bridge operations while ferrying. In other words, you should ferry all units which you are able to this turn before initiating the bridge operations, and the bridge must be ultimately completed before conducting any additional ferrying. It's rare that you would need to ferry a unit while holding a bridge, but it can help with traffic jams. Also worth noting that if there is a second engineer unit on the hex not conducting bridge operations, that second engineer can still perform ferry actions freely. So you can have one engineer building a bridge and one conducting ferrying actions. Mind your hex stacking limits. This is an excellent segue into the next phase of our attack, establishing a bridgehead and moving our heavy equipment over the river in order to press the attack and exploit our river crossing. An engineer bridge counts as a heavy bridge and will allow us to move practically any unit type across the river. Not all engineers are created equal, though. There are different types, such as mine-clearing engineers and bridge engineers. Only units specifically designated as bridge engineers can construct bridges. The same rules for heavy bridges apply for engineer bridges. Our engineer unit has completed its necessary ferry actions and can initiate the bridge building action from the bridge operation menu here. Select the direction of the bridge that you want to build. Consider the same points about ferrying and terrain as previously mentioned. Additionally, consider that having a bridge cross onto a road hex will allow units to take advantage of road movement, and engineers which are maintaining a bridge are excluded from the road stacking limit, allowing your units in travel mode to pass directly through, which we can use for a significant increase in speed. Pay careful attention to which hex you initiate the bridge building from and to. Small choices here can make a huge difference in the amount of ground your units are able to cover in a single turn, and fixing bridge orientation mistakes is highly time-consuming. Experience gained as a battlefield commander will help you strike a balance between maneuverability and opportunity. One other key factor regarding engineer bridges: they do not count as rail bridges. If you are trying to cross an enrailed unit over an engineer bridge, it must be disembarked, moved across the engineer bridge, and then re-embarked. Trains cannot cross engineer bridges either. The same rules which apply to an engineer initiating a ferry action also apply to initiating a bridge operation. No disruptions or breaks, no digging in, no rail, and the unit must be deployed. Initiating the bridge building action will use the engineer's full movement points for the turn, and the engineer will be in bridge ops mode until the bridge is completed, or the bridge operation is canceled by using the bridge operation command again. Canceling bridge operations does not consume action points, which is useful if you need to withdraw in a hurry, as engineers currently conducting bridge operations cannot move. Becoming disrupted will not cancel bridge operations, but getting pushed by an assault or becoming broken will. Again, protect your engineers. The amount of time it takes for an engineer to complete a bridge is ultimately randomized based on the parameter data file in combination with a number of game rules. You can consult the manual for the specifics of these rules, but it's fair to summarize like this. On average, larger, higher quality combined bridge engineer units will build bridges faster. Splitting your engineer units to attempt multiple bridge constructions may be appropriate in some situations, but be aware that it may take longer on average to get either bridge built. On the other side, stacking multiple engineers in the same hex and setting them to bridge operations in the same direction will additionally increase the average speed of construction. If you do decide to stack your engineers, consider that the size may prevent moving additional attacking units onto the hex due to hex stacking limits. While our engineer conducts its bridge building operations, we widen our bridgehead with our ferried units and continue the attack. In our situation, the bridge is completed in a single turn. Lucky us. It's time to conduct the final step in this phase of our operation. Before we begin, there are several details to consider about our bridge engineer. First, the engineer now has the status of has bridge, which denotes that they are actively maintaining the bridge. While the engineer unit has the bridge, it cannot fire and it can only move to cross its own bridge. The engineer must be in travel mode and will consume all of their movement points to do so. In some cases, it's appropriate to get the engineer to the other side of their own bridge, such as when you have already moved all necessary units across the bridge and you want to take your engineer with you. Next, consider breaking down the bridging engineer unit once the bridge is established. While having the unit combined will speed up the bridge building process, once the bridge is established, there is not generally a need to keep the unit combined unless under threat or digging in. Speaking of, your engineer, which is now maintaining the bridge, can and should dig in. It is not possible for an enemy unit to cross your engineer's bridge, including via assault. If an engineer holding a bridge loses an assault defense without breaking, a message will be displayed stating that units holding bridges cannot move away from their bridge. However, as of patch 4.05.2H1, if an engineer unit maintaining a bridge is broken, it will retreat from that bridge crossing, but will not lose its bridge. If the engineer unit is destroyed, you lose the bridge and it cannot be recovered. Protect your engineers. A final tip for streams. An engineer unit can lay a bridge across a stream, which is useful for roads with lighter bridges where you know you will be trying to move heavy equipment. Planning in advance here can go a long way. Now that our bridge is established, we proceed to move motorized infantry, scout cars, tanks, AT guns, and artillery across the river. Our attack and bypassing of the enemy strong points is progressing nicely. Before we move to this final phase, we should consider what to do with our bridge engineers. We have the option of leaving them in place, which will allow us to move additional reinforcements across the river. As mentioned, engineers are allowed to cross their own hex side bridge, but must remain adjacent to the hex side. The engineer cannot cross if an enemy unit is on the other side of the bridge because maintaining the bridge prevents attacking and assault. We can also dismantle our bridge and allow the engineer units free movement again. The rules for disassembling bridges follow the same principles as the rules for assembling bridges. Larger, higher quality units will disassemble bridges faster on average. Note that stacking multiple engineer battalions will not have an effect on the speed at which the bridge is disassembled. Therefore, it is not unreasonable to expect that the disassembly of the bridge will take longer than the assembly. Only disassemble your engineer bridge if you can ensure a supply line will remain in place to the units on the other side of the river. As a last resort, your engineer can abandon the bridge using the Abandon Bridge command to gain the No Bridge status. Use cases for this would include immediate threat to a key engineer, or in desperation to rush to defense or support of an attack. Once abandoned, a bridge cannot be recovered, and this unit will be unable to lay a bridge for the remainder of the scenario. So, the final use case would be if you are 100% sure that you will not need to lay another bridge with this engineer during this scenario, and you are 100% sure it will not interrupt your supply lines. Now that our division is across the river, we will also move 2 new key engineer units with us: our boat engineers and our heavy bridge engineers. These units will be critical in the storming of the mighty Vistula River, which lays before our advance. We'll separate our supporting boat engineers into individual companies and move them into place. An engineer hex-side ferry action can reasonably be compared to a hex-side ferry with additional limitations. An engineer boat ferrying action can reasonably be compared to a full hex ferry with additional limitations. Boat engineers are specified within the scenario data as opposed to the order of battle, and therefore any type of engineer may have boats. The rules for initiating boat ferrying are similar to those of hex-side ferrying. The engineer must not be building or dismantling a bridge, and must not be laying or clearing mines. In addition, the engineer unit must not be disrupted or broken, must have full movement allowance, and must not be in travel or rail mode. The unit being ferried by boat also follows similar rules to units using the engineer ferry action. No heavy units, but in the case of boat ferrying, the unit need not be broken down, and therefore boat ferry actions can transport battalion-sized units. If the boat engineer happens to leave the hex or become broken, your ferrying unit will become stranded and must wait for another boat engineer to return to the ferry origination hex. We maneuver our motorized units into place and bid their trucks farewell by using the on-foot command. We'll transport the now footborne units via boat across the river. Both embarking and disembarking from the boats will consume the unit's full movement points, so count on a minimum of 2 turns for a boat ferry. Multiple full water hexes can be crossed by boat ferry. Boat engineers can also self-ferry, but will need to give up their transport. The last step of our final operational phase is upon us. We need to transport our heavy equipment to the other side of the Vistula. We'll use a pontoon bridge to do so. Engineers building full hex pontoon bridges share the same rules as engineers building hex-side bridges, with a key difference. A minimum amount of time must pass while an engineer conducts the pontoon bridge operation before the bridge can be completed. Once that time minimum, as defined in the scenario data file, has passed, then the regular bridge construction rules take over. Again, larger, higher quality units will assemble pontoon bridges faster on average. Once the full water hex pontoon has been created, we can continue our attack onto victory. In this video, we learned every aspect of the engineer unit in Panzer Campaigns. You learned how to utilize your engineers to maintain pressure against the opposing force and move your infantry and heavy equipment across the river. Thank you for watching this Panzer Campaigns Boot Camp series. I'll see you in the next installment.